Every single one of us has beliefs, and if asked, the majority of us believe that we would stand by them when faced with opposition. In a lot of cases, these beliefs can differ significantly, and this can lead to tension. Most of us think that we would stand by our beliefs at all costs, and that believing is enough to bring about change, but when it comes down to it, sometimes the stakes are high. Really high. Sometimes your beliefs can get you killed. My name is Brienne, and I'm the host and creator of Among the Dirt and Trees, a show where we explore true crime cases that occur out in nature. In today's episode, we're going to discuss the horrific slaying of Dorothy Stang, a 73-year-old member of the Sisters of Notre de Namur, who fought to protect the poor and the environment in the Amazon basin. Dorothy was targeted for her outspoken beliefs and the hard work that she put in to make the world a better place. Every day, she put her life on the line. And then one day, 3 men decided to take it. Dorothy Stang was a sweet and fierce woman who was born in America and later became a naturalized citizen of Brazil. This means that during her lifetime, she was granted citizenship despite being born in Ohio. And her story was beautiful until it all came crashing down around her in 2005. Like most of us, Dorothy had beliefs that she felt very strongly about. Unlike most of us, she was the person who did something about it. She didn't just retweet someone else's sentiments or donate a few extra dollars to a foundation that might or might not use the money for a good cause. She was the cause. In 1948, Dorothy joined the Sisters of Notre de Namur. The sisters were a group of Catholic women who were committed to bettering the lives of the less fortunate. Their key concerns were overall well-being, education, and safety. Within 15 years of joining, Dorothy decided to go where she was needed. She committed to ministry in Brazil. This means that she decided to spread her faith and provide helpful aid and services in the area. In this case, the area was in the Amazon. On the day that she died, she was in the city of Namur. Now, I know that a lot of you are from all over the world, and I'm actually pretty surprised by that. I have no idea what would compel so many people to listen to a random lady from the United States talk about the dangers of going outside, but I am glad that you're here all the same. Realizing that Among the Dirt and Trees touches so many different parts of the world has certainly made me consider the assumptions that I make while writing. With this case, I really wanted to make a point about the ways that so many of us can express our beliefs in really easy ways that don't require much, and I still want to make that point. I'm certainly not the first person to point out that plenty of people only truly support their beliefs by sharing content and wearing conveniently branded t-shirts and things like that, but having a global audience, I realize that this might not be the case where you are. You might live somewhere where that same t-shirt that is good enough for someone where I live could get you killed, and I know that it's important to highlight that. I also know that this is true for plenty of people here in America too, even if it isn't always as obvious. I don't say this to trash talk people who have the privilege of sharing their beliefs. And I'm definitely not saying that I'm better in any way. But I want to point this out because this was not what Dorothy was doing. She wasn't giving her opinion on something bad from behind the safety of a screen from a place where those specific bad things weren't actually happening. She spent decades in Brazil sharing her truth and actually working to turn her beliefs that focused on protecting others, into reality. And when she did this, there was no promise of safety. I'm not some worldly or enlightened person, and I won't pretend that I know anything in full detail about the world around me. I'm a woman in the United States who has lived in the same state my entire life. I live about 10 minutes away from where I spent the majority of my childhood, and while that's about to change, it certainly limits my scope of understanding and forces me to rely on other sources. For all intents and purposes, my personal world is a little small. When I research cases, it's just that. Internet research. My understanding of Brazil, or the complexity of the struggles that the country has been through throughout the decades, will likely always be secondhand information at best, and probably not from the best sources. But what I do know from my research is that in certain parts of Brazil, things have been pretty complicated for a really long time. Like plenty of other countries, Brazil has had its share of ongoing struggles between criminals and people who were not wealthy enough to protect themselves, corrupt governments, and more. And in this, Dorothy saw a need for help. She was focused on two things: protecting the poor, particularly poor farmers and property owners, and preserving the rainforest, which she believed was a life force for the planet, and that's true. Dorothy helped these individuals to grow their own sustainable crops that would not harm the rainforest. And she didn't just help these people to make money and grow their own crops. She was also vocal about the need to protect a vulnerable population against people that wanted to terrorize them out of their land. The reason that these criminals wanted this land? Really? To promote deforestation. I know that saying that might sound weird, but it's something that I feel like we don't always fully connect. Were these people out destroying land and cutting down trees because they hate trees? Probably not. Are they supervillains looking to destroy the planet through climate change? No. These individuals are after money, whether from selling these materials or, more likely, in this case, getting paid to intimidate farmers who have a little bit of land and not much else. In 2019, National Geographic reported that in the last 50 years, 17% of the rainforest was destroyed. And Dorothy was literally there during nearly 40 of those years. During her time, she helped local farmers to become self-sufficient and encouraged them to find their own voice and support the rainforest despite the pressure from nearby organizations. She petitioned for government protection for these individuals, but she was continuously denied. She saw the destruction and the terrors that came with criminals in the area, and she dedicated her life to making a difference. From what I can tell, it seems like it did. But now, we have to talk about the cost. On February 12th, Dorothy Stang had business to attend to. She had a morning community meeting that she was set to speak at. Like she had for decades before, Dorothy was there to talk about the Amazon, the area, and the rights of the forest and the people around it. To attend the meeting, Dorothy had to walk up a dirt road across a local settlement. On this day, she invited a friend to join her, a local farmer, but because he was running late, he actually ended up walking quite a ways behind her. From his vantage point, he could see what Dorothy couldn't: two armed men trailing behind her. Dorothy didn't stop initially because she likely didn't notice. When the two men presented themselves, she wasn't surprised. By this point, Dorothy was no stranger to the ongoing death threats that followed her because of her work. Loggers, landowners, and criminals alike all hated Dorothy and considered her a risk to their work. On this day, she refused to bow to their intimidation, just like she had for decades before. The two men cut Dorothy off, blocking her path. They demanded to know if she had any weapons on her, and in response, she began to quote the Bible. At this point, one man looked to the other, and then he turned a gun on Dorothy. He shot her once in the stomach, once in the back, and several times in the head. After all of her hard work, Dorothy was murdered for what she believed in by two complete strangers, leaving many heartbroken people behind. As you can tell, this wasn't exactly a normal murder. When it comes to the law, killing someone is different than killing, say, an outspoken political figure. While Dorothy was a naturalized Brazilian citizen, she was also an American, and the American government demanded answers regarding Dorothy's death. What came from this was a several-year-long legal battle. It involved appeals, it involved fights. Both men were eventually retried, and the man who hired them was as well. By the end of it, each of the 3 men were sentenced to 30 years in prison apiece, but most people don't believe that's enough. Like Dorothy, they know that the actions of these men and the men themselves were just more heads on an ever-growing hydra that needs to be stopped. Dorothy was killed because she believed in the health of our planet and the rights of the people that she served. And while this was a truly terrible outcome, it also wasn't the end of Dorothy's story. In 2008, Dorothy received the United Nations Human Rights Prize for her hard work and sacrifice. And while we all love winning awards, Dorothy's bravery and downfall brought about something even better, at least in theory. After Dorothy was killed, the Brazilian president at the time put just under 20,000 square miles of the Amazon under federal environmental protection. While this does seem like an improvement, and many hope that it would help, I will note that this president did later end up in prison for corruption and was actually replaced, and no, I don't fully understand the complexities behind that. I will also note that right now, large groups of people are protesting the current president, Jair Bolsonaro, and while I'm not sure what this might mean for the rainforest, I know that it certainly means something to the people of Brazil. This was a true crime case that involved a lot of factors that are, frankly, above my pay grade, but I do know that Dorothy is missed, and I hope that my listeners in Brazil are staying safe. So, if you want to talk about what is going on in Brazil, the confusion of trying to understand global politics using everyday news sources, or fighting for what you believe in, feel free to contact me on Twitter or Instagram using the tag @datpod. Thanks, guys.